everybody, Ben here with the PointByPatrol. Just wanted to discuss the track aftermath and what you might be looking for when you bring your car home from the track. I did put up 2 previous videos yesterday. One was for the oil change that took place after the track. The other was for a transmission fluid exchange that also took place after the track. I hit a 5th gear lockout twice while I was on the track, so hopefully that transmission fluid helps us out. And it wasn't a harsh event or anything like that. It was just a matter of, I'm in 4th, I'm going down the back straight, I go to push into 5th, and it bounced back. It never fully went in. It basically just told me no. So we swapped that fluid out in a previous video. Should be good to go now. I haven't driven the car yet though for a big reason, and that's because the front brakes are making a lot of noise. So we're gonna inspect those. It's time for me to retire the rotors that are on the car currently because they're cracked, they're wore slam out, they saw a lot of heat. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that I opted to leave the backing plates on my car. And I did that for 2 reasons. One, it's a new car and I really just didn't want to molest it. On my FK8, I did take off the backing plates, but what I did experience there was a lot of heat getting to my speed sensors. And I ended up having to wrap those with, heat protection, and that seemed to curb that issue. But what I might do on the FL5, and I'm still undecided on this, whether I'm going to leave them on or not, or modify them. I might just trim them down, make them a little bit smaller so that there's still a little bit of heat protection for the electronics that plug into the hub. But we're going into fall, winter time now. Track season's over for me. Honestly, it kind of just makes sense just to leave them since they're not going to see any kind of abuse like they would see typically on the track. But what this video is going to mainly be about is just taking a look at those brakes, discussing why it's time to replace the rotor discs now, putting on some Hawk, just street performance pads, something that I'll just drive on until track season opens back up. When track season does open back up, I'll swap over for another race pad. And we'll also do disassembly and reassembly of the rotor and hat. So we'll go ahead and get started on that now. Here's the passenger front rotor at first glance, and I know with the sun here it's a little bit hard to see, but you can see that there's a color difference here, and this is where the rotor's been getting dug into. It's a really rough surface. It's like catching on my gloves here on the outside, and hopefully we can see this okay, but you'll notice that bottom pad there is metal to metal with the rotor, and you can see kind of on the inside here how the pistons look, and so it went metal to metal there, and I can see some fibers hanging out here where the pad just disintegrated. This is the only pad that looks like that. The ones on the other side actually look like they could go for another round. So some bad business happened on this side, and it's resulted in these pads really no longer being of any use to me. I'm going to have to swap them out for new pads come track season next year. But I'm going to go ahead and take this off. I'm going to take this off. We're going to put this in a vise so that we can remove this center hat section here, since it is reusable. And we're going to take a close-up look at the pads once I get them out so that we can see what kind of failure we experienced. Alright, so I got the wheel sideways here. This is sitting loose on there, but I am going to have to back these up. But you can see exactly what happened to this pad. I've got meat down here, and it looks like the pad compound just broke entirely apart. Went metal on metal. This side looked like it was basically doing the same thing. A little bit more meat here at the top than at the bottom. It's not the first time I've seen this. That lower piston's got a lot of force. It's small, medium, and large. And heat is also definitely a factor here because of that backing plate, which is now making music for me. A little bit rattly. So, possible I might have to decide to do something with it today, but the further I get into this, the better I'll be able to tell. Yeah, so I got everything apart here, and I'm a bit shocked by the findings, to be completely honest. So this was my inside pad, this was my outside pad, and as you can see, the material just came off. came right out of where it was being held on. I mean, this thing is absolutely toast. And this isn't much better. You can see, you know, here in the center where it's starting to come apart, so it was going to suffer a similar fate. And then, you know, looking at the rotor here and just really getting in on some of these cracks, like that guy right there is pretty serious. And right here, if that happens to an APSX rotor, that little guy, that crack right there, that's when you know you're done. This rotor is no longer to be used because the crack spreads literally all the way through the material here. So these definitely need new rings. These old rings here are spent. I mean, just get a look at that, guys. That is absolutely insane how much these guys wore out just in the course of a few days at the track. So definitely have a heat issue to deal with. But you know, the wild part is the biggest brake pad failure was on the outside where it has access to the most cooling, and I have yet to find a crack on the inside of the rotor hat. So you know, not really sure what to think of that. Either way, these need to be operating at much cooler temperatures. Clearly, we're getting way too hot here. Brake pads shouldn't look like that, really shouldn't fall apart, and I've never had one do that to me before. But I would still consider this to be acceptable pad life, except for when you flip it over, it's significantly thinner. So, no good. It's absolutely no good. So I'm gonna get started tearing this guy apart here. I've got some fresh rings that to put on, and we're gonna put those on the car. All right, so you can see on the time lapse that I did get that done. And for the next one, I'm going to shoot from the backside so you can kind of see what I'm doing there. But they alternate with the clips, like spring clips. And they also have to be torqued to specification. The specification on these is 124 inch-pounds. There is a foot-pound measurement too. I believe it's 10, but I prefer to use my inch-pound torque wrench for this. And there we have it. We've got one reassembled rotor there, and we're going to go put the brakes back together on that side, and then we'll get started on the driver's side. Okay, so we have our assembled brake system here. See, I've got, these are actually slightly used, but basically brand new pads back in here. They're some kind of Hawk Street Performance, I think Street Performance 5.0s or something like that. It's gonna sound funny, but I actually don't really give a damn what they are. They could even be factory brake pads for all I care, because these aren't really gonna be exposed to the same kind of heat or anything like that. But they will stop the car, and they probably won't be incredibly noisy. One other thing of note here, these are not pre-burnished rotors. So what that means is before you purchase them, it's an optional add-on service that Essex can perform for you. And they basically put the rotor in a dyno with a brake pad compound of your choice. Really, for them, it's their in-house stuff, which is going to be the Ferodo. And they spin it around on this dyno, applying pressure with Ferodo compound, and it burnishes the brake pad material into the rotor, which is great. What I have found out, though, is that the Hawk pads and the Ferodo pads, the compound differs so much that they will literally rub each other off. So you could be going from Hawk to Ferodo or Ferodo to Hawk, and they'll basically re-clean the face of the rotor and then need to be bedded back in. So I will take these for a bedding ride. They'll still be fine to use for track use, even if I decide to swap up the pad compound on there, so I'm really not worried about that. And yeah, I mean, much safer now than it was before, that's for sure. All right, I got a second side disassembled, and I mean, completely different story on this side. So these are the pads. Plenty left. Really on both. I feel comfortable going back out on track with those. I do have a couple micro cracks, but not near, right over here. Yeah, in this area. See if I can back up there. But not nearly as bad as the other rotor. And so I pulled the shims to take a look. This is from the driver's side, and this is from the passenger side. And if you look at how much the heat came out on the passenger side compared to the driver's side, so the blues, the really, really hot spots, there's a lot more cold on the driver's side than on the passenger side. So that tells me that's what's happening, and it was sort of starting to happen here. These pads got so hot that they actually started to smear, and it was filling in this center groove, which is supposed to help gases escape. But basically you have molten pad getting inside of here, and so that explains why the other one split. It had enough molten pad inside of it that it just busted the material off the side of it. So basically what that tells me, and what the evidence suggests here, those backing plates absolutely have to come off. I'm not entirely sure why the passenger side would see more heat necessarily than the driver's side. It could just be, it could be a number of right-hand turns, possibly, where there's just a little more lateral pressure there, but that still doesn't make sense. So any of you guys that have been doing this a while that may have a solid answer, please post those in the comments, because I want to learn too. I'm here to help you guys learn, but I don't know everything. So go ahead and toss in the comments any kind of thought that you might have on why there's such a big difference between both sides. But I'll go ahead and get started dismantling this guy, and we'll get a new rotor ring installed on this and get the car put back together. It'll be nice to drive it again. It's just been sitting in the driveway all week. All right, so the driver's side's all reassembled. Everything's good to go. I just got to pump up the brakes. I did have to suck a little bit of fluid out, which wasn't a big deal. It's right on full mark where it's supposed to be, but thanks for watching. That's really all there was to it. But again, if any of you guys have ideas about that failure, or if you've experienced it before, throw it in the comments and we'll discuss it. Like and subscribe. Appreciate it.